Hi, I'm Marc Daniel Nelson here with Make My Music. Today I want to talk about digital conversion and critical listening. Now, when I started off first back in 2000 at Chicago Recording Company, they had a Sony Dash machine, ADATs, Pro Tools Mix Plus 24 on the old 888 converters, and I believe some of the post rooms might have had Apogee converters. During that time, I was transitioning from analog as an assistant into the digital land, and there was still a lot of problems. Now, there was converters like the radar converter that seemed to be the closest at the time to sound like analog, and it was just a lot of people didn't really kind of jive with it. There was some people that felt that it was just too sterile, too harsh, and we were just too early in the game to actually know what was going on. Fast forward to 2006 for me, when I first heard conversion and what it really meant. And that was my first introduction to critical listening and kind of hyper-focusing on hyper detail. I was producing an album back in 2006 that Bill Schnee mixed and Doug Sax mastered. And when I came out to Los Angeles, he printed two versions. One was on a DSD recorder and one was on 192. At that time, the 192 converter was just built for him, and he was kind of going between the two, and him and Doug were trying to figure out what was the best. What they wanted was something that sounded like straight wire. They wanted it to sound like what you were hearing from the master, not from the recorder, because always, even in tape land, what you get back, you're hearing what the device is doing, and you're missing a lot of the overall vibe and the sound of what an actual mix was replicating before it even hit the 2-track. So what Bill and Doug were trying to achieve and trying to hunt down for was the best sounding replication that they could get. So today I want to show you 4 different converters: the Benchmark ADC-1, the Orion Antelope 32 HD, the Burl B2 ADC, and the JCF 88. Let's take a listen to all 4 of these and see what they sound like. So these 4 converters I have here today actually mean a little bit to me. Going back to the Benchmark ADC-1. That first time I ever saw that converter was in the mastering lab, and I saw it at a few other mastering studios throughout the early 2000s, and that was a really neat introduction to high-end conversion. It still actually sounds great. It's used specifically for specific types of things, and I know a lot of guys are still using it. The next converter is the Burl Bomber 2. This converter I had about 6 years ago, and I thought it was really cool. I thought it was very different from anything out there, and it added elements to the tracking part of it that created something that I couldn't get off of any other converter. That was probably the first color converter that I've ever used. I used their mothership quite a bit, and in general, it's just this pretty neat little sounding box. The Orion converter is the converter that I use for my summing, and I use it because it has a ton of I/O and it sounds great. And then finally, the JCF 88. Now, Josh Florian is a guy that really cares about audio. Now, I met Josh back in late 2006, I believe, maybe early 2007, when he was building converters for Doug Sax and Bill Schnee. The cool thing that I found out way in the beginning was how much a converter actually matters, how it makes you hear and feel and emotionally connect to a song. And this is the Snapshot, the 2-track converter. And when we were up at the mastering lab, I still remember it. It was the first time I actually ever did any kind of critical listening to hear what the difference was and the fine detail in the transients and the low end. And I think there's a picture of me sitting in a choo-choo with Doug and Bill, just listening, and both of us or all of us calling which one we thought was better. The winner of that day was the Josh converter. And since then, I've been a super fan, and he's a really good guy too. So I have his JCF 88 here that I've been using for quite a while now as my pickup converter. Now for me, in a converter that I want to take a screenshot or a capture of my mix, I don't really want something that's going to add a ton of vibe and color. Now for tracking, that's completely different. I think you can try to utilize as much vibe and character as you can when you're capturing the sound. But when you're doing your mix, for me, I just want to hear what it's doing, and straight wire, less is better. And for Josh's converter, what I know about that specific 88 is there is no electronics in the circuit, zero. And the transformers that he chose are specific to getting the best sound you can out of it. Now, these 4 converters are very subtle difference, but once you hear it, it's very big. And just like anything in pro audio, like high-end audio, that extra 5% is really hard to achieve. So let's just listen to this track. This track is by Wolfjet, and the song is called Mean Old River. Let's go to the benchmark.
And my life is full of love. I had a baby, so fine and fair, but that river killed them all down there. Mean old river, gone and carried them away.
Let's go to the Orion. Go back to the Burl. JCF.
I miss my mother, I miss my papa too. I miss my brother, all them bad things that he do.
In the JCF converter, it feels like notes are just extending. Now, I'm going to leave these samples up so everyone can download them and listen to them on their own time. But kind of think about this. Now, the JCF converter, it's smoother. The kick drum is more out. Everything has a better separation. But it just feels like bass notes and piano and reverb and guitars. They all they extend longer. They just go longer. And it just feels way more like you're listening directly off the console than on the playback of a converter. It sounds just like my tubas. And since then, I've been like, okay, this is critical listening. It's going down to the absolute 5%, the 3%, and making a difference. So when you can finally focus into that little area, then everything else becomes really obvious. Every mistake and everything. Let's go back to the Burl. Now, there are things on the Burl that I actually really do like, and I want to talk about that. So let me play it again. The thing that I like about the Burl V2 is you can hear it, and that's great. It's tying things down, it's making things tight, which can be really neat. Go to the benchmark, it's very clean. So the aggressiveness on the vocal.
I had a baby, so fine and fair, but that river
Now the Burl,
killed them all down there.
it's a little more open. Here's the JCF. It's It's like going around your head.
Me no river, gone and carried
And the Orion.
away.
I don't hate the Orion as a pickup converter, but it is certainly aggressive. Now the Burl again is cool because it's pulling out a bass guitar issue that I think was the issue with this mix. That's neat. Let's go to the JCF. So I've been trying to figure out how to explain what I hear that's really hard to describe in the JCF converter. And I think I figured it out last night. Now, you know, back in the day when there was tube TVs out there, there was this really weird, aggressive, high-pitched frequency that you could hear. And it was really aggressive. And if you turned it off, it would be like, oh, your body related to that sound. Even if you couldn't really hear it, you felt it, and it felt different. With the converters here, all three of these do something that when you click in the JCF 88, it doesn't do. And that is, it's not like you notice it and you can hear it, but when you click into the JCF, you don't feel it. You don't feel the sense of clamp or tension. It's really hard to describe, and if you focus on it, you will hear it. So let's listen to that again. Let's go to the benchmark. Burl. Reverb starts blooming a little bit. The other cool thing that the difference is, so the Burl has this smoother vocal. Now listen to the vocal on the JCF. There's a little more detail and definition in the fur. Here's my final conclusion. In conversion, in critical listening, the 5% means everything. When you're up against another mixer or you're up against yourself and you just want the best you can get, 5% doesn't sound like a lot until that last 5%. And if you can't get that 5%, it feels like 100%. In conversion, if you're trying to make a bigger mix, which is something that I always try to achieve, the bigger than life kind of straight wire, less is more sound. If it does add color, it adds something that will enhance it. It makes it bigger. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from today is just kind of hyper focusing on that extra 5% and what critical listening can do, because even that 5% can help you get a louder mix where it doesn't sound like it's hitting walls. Feel free to download all 4 of these samples and listen to them and make comments below. And thank you again for watching. Have a great day.